everybody.
Hey,
Sometimes the finger button pushing finger does not work right. So you got a fair preview of who you were gonna see on the show today. Surprise, surprise! It's me and Kyle.
guys, for everyone behind the scenes, what you probably don't get to hear is Angela every time before we start the show. She says, "Okay, I'm going to go press some buttons. It's time to press some buttons. Make some things happen."
Yeah, my finger just got like a spaz happy.
Ready to launch the show. It's good.
Yeah. So this is The Destiny of Your Soul. I'm Angela Talent, author of Poems from a Lost Soul and the host of the Relatively Damaged podcast. And with me, of course, as always, is Kyle.
Kyle Spirides, and the author of Decide Your Destiny and the Decide Your Destiny movement, and I'm happy to be here. Last episode, I was on a train, catching a
Yes.
train from one location to another in Sydney, and yeah, we made it work. Well, as soon as the show kicked off, and you started talking, I put myself on mute because these two people got on the train, and I've never heard. Maybe you're more attuned to it because you're doing something that requires audio, but I've never heard two people just shout like they were sitting opposite each other, and they were just like rah 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 rah. I was like, my God! So I had to walk down some aisles. So if you want to check out that episode, you can let us know what you thought of the adventure podcast.
Yeah, that was such an adventure. It was really interesting too, because sometimes I would hear the bell go off, and then it was a real testament of, am I being a good listener today? you know, you know, and really, actually, I think it's also a good testament of, is my meditation helping? And I think it is, because I was not as distracted as I probably would have been previously. Like, oh my gosh, there's this bell going off in the background. There's a stop. It was great.
Well, that's a great point you bring up because part of the question for part of today's episode really is about like what do you do when the shit hits the when the shit hits the fan? Like, what do you do when when it's chaotic and it's challenging and it's not perfect conditions all the time, and I guess what skills do you lean on? What sort of resources do you pull from and glean from? And you've been doing the meditation, and that's been something that's been working with you and helping you, and they're the resources and skills you pulled from, and that's who we are, is like who we are as people, is that we've got this kind of the scope of all these skills and resources that we can develop, so that because it's pretty naive to think like, oh, we had a little blip, in 2008, in 1990, but it's going to be smooth sailing here on out. It's like, no, life is everything. So just being really focusing on what skills you can develop, resources you can pull out of you, will help you.
Yeah.
And you
Oh,
probably never
yeah.
thought like this is going to help me with Kyle on a noisy train while we do a podcast. You never thought that meditation. This is where I'm going to use this.
Yeah. Well, but isn't that where life happens, in the struggle?
Yeah.
Because I can wait and wait and wait for something great to happen. And it's, and that I think I almost quoted perfectly Scott McKee, who I interviewed earlier this week. But, because he was stung by a bee, almost died, and then he was afraid to go outside because he thought he was going to die, and that these bees were after him and all of that. And someone pointed out, like, well, hold on a second. Life's happening right now in the midst of this struggle. In the midst of the train, we were having a fantastic conversation and we were figuring it out. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like the perfect soundproof situation. There was noise, and yet there were some really great insights that we got to have.
That maybe would not have happened sitting at home. Like for me, I think probably some of the insights happened because I was out moving, and there were other people sitting right close by, and so that I had to kind of, I don't know, I'm okay with not getting embarrassed, and if people walk, or in public with me, they're usually realize I've got a certain, like, I don't have a blockage where a lot of people have a social approval or embarrassment blockage, and so I can quickly embarrass people because I just be, and it's just like, and they're like, oh my god, like God, like, oh, rein it in, man, rein it in, but I can't help that, and I think so for me, like doing a podcast on a train with random people, like literally surrounding you, most people probably wouldn't be able to do. And before it, I was like, oh, all right, I can get out there and make a fool of myself and get embarrassed and not, and push through it. But then I was like, when I was on the train, I was like, wait, am I going to do this? Like, I know at this platform, like half the train fills up. Like, am I going to be able to talk to Angela while there's people and their eyes like watching you? Like, it's very different than the comforts of your own home sort of thing. And it pushed me in that way, because like, okay, are you all talk? Can you actually be yourself, be truly, authentically you anywhere, on the stand here, in this podium there, in the back of the car over here? Can you be yourself everywhere? And
Yeah.
I think that was a good test and a testament to the work that I've done. But I definitely think it does, when you're in that challenge, it makes you think quickly, because I was talking to you and I was on my phone, so then I was putting like it on mute every time, like I heard the doors opening, and then I was trying to like preempt noises and then put things on mute, and so it was like, it was really getting my brain going, so maybe the conversation was better, I don't know.
It was definitely, I mean, yeah, it was good. It was good. It was a lot of work too, because really making sure I'm listening. Like, it was a challenge. It was fantastic. But there's a quote in your book. I don't know the page. Does it tell me the page on here? Because I have the Kindle version. It says, the challenging moments in life, the moments that ask everything of you, are often the greatest blessings that you can be gifted with in this universe. And man, the funny thing is I've really been working on my listening, or at least trying to, right? And I'm like, but I was drawn in. I'm like, okay, I want to get every word. Like, I was hanging on every word, and I'm like, okay, do I, what
every
do I
bell.
want to say? Yeah. it was so cool. But
ding, ding, ding,
like,
doors opening.
yeah, I think that the challenge, it brings out the best in us, whether we realize it or not. Now, the poem
100%.
that I want to bring up, the poem for
Yes.
the chapter, because it doesn't necessarily go on with it almost seems like, oh, does it really go with this chapter? And let me assure you, it does. It does, because sometimes we make a decision, right? But sometimes we make a decision, we believe we know our path, and then people start coming up to us and they start challenging us on our choices and our decisions, and we feel certain in our path. And so this poem is about that person coming up to us, right? And it's called Power Trip, and it says, when someone else thinks they know what I should do and impose their will, I feel hurt, confused, angry, rebellious. How could anyone know what's best for me? Where there's love, where's the love? Excuse me. Where's the love? Where's the support when I choose what's best for me? Conditional love is not love. It's a bargaining chip. It's a power trip.
Wow.
Yeah. Like,
that's powerful.
That conditional love, it can be, because it becomes transactional, right? If you don't do this the way I think you should, then you're not good enough. And if you're not good enough, then I don't love you.
This, what you just shared, was actually something that I was thinking about recently. So I got the book in print. So awesome experience. Been loving it, and people have been telling me. Some people have been telling me like what it should feel like, or it must feel like. And for me, I didn't get those feelings. I actually got probably feelings or emotions or an energy that maybe isn't as humble or politically correct or so I got all this sort of stuff that just kind of came through, and for a while I was going, like, because you got the Kindle early, you've been an early supporter, and I launched the book a while ago online, Kindle, which a lot of people do these days, and then got the print, but there was quite a gap between the print, and it was quite a gap between like people supporting, then the Kindle available, then the print, and so there's been time lags, and therefore there's been kind of, I guess, communication lags of like what, like the book communicating what it means to me, because there's been gaps, and so getting the print like was always in my mind. People were saying, "Oh, you published a book. Oh, Amazon bestseller. Oh, what does this all mean?" And for me, like I had to put on a fake smile, because like I don't know, because I didn't have the physical thing in my hand, it just didn't feel real. And like, and I told a lot of people, I was straightforward with, look, it's awesome. I'm like really excited, but I don't have the actual physical book yet, so it doesn't really feel real to me, and that's just how I feel. And then so when it happened, people were saying like, "Oh, like this is how it must feel," like other authors, and I was like, man, it doesn't feel like that to me. It just doesn't feel like that to me, and it was weird, and then I quickly, which probably in the past I wouldn't have, but I quickly went, okay, look, you've got a lack of feeling here, or emotion, or not the emotion that other authors are telling you that you would feel. And that's the thing, like when people do something and then you do it after them, they kind of want to share all their experiences again, because then they relive it vicariously through your first time. So, but I went, I don't need to judge the lack of those feelings. I don't need to judge the lack of emotions, or like I don't need to judge that and criticize that. Let me just keep doing the right thing, which is getting the book out to the people that purchased it, and physically, I did a post. I said, I'm going to deliver the book to you, and we can have a coffee. We can sit down. If you're available, if you've got the flexibility, I'll try and meet that opportunity. I want to say thank you for supporting the book all that time ago, and sit down and buy your coffee as well. So that was the kind of that was the new mission. Was like, okay, let me use this book as a point of contact and a touching point, like skin on skin, connecting with people again, rather than all the digital. So that, and I got nothing against the digital, but I was just like, okay, this is going to push me out of comfort zone to actually go and meet people, sit down with them, and do more of that sort of face-to-face stuff. So that I did that, and through that was my focus, and it wasn't the focus of why don't I feel like this, why don't I feel all these emotions that everyone's saying, let me just let it come through. And then day by day it started coming through, and it was kind of this different sort of feeling and energy and experience that other people were telling me that I was supposed to have and I didn't have. So what you're sharing in the poem, it's bang on to people. I almost felt like this. People want you to, and me sharing what my actual thoughts were, what my unhumble attitudes were, what my thing. It was kind of like I felt like this chip on the shoulder just got bigger, and it like was driving me, and it was like, whoa, like that's probably not what everyone was like saying, oh, you must just feel grateful, and like, which I did. I feel immensely grateful, but and then you must feel all these like joy and inner calm and inner. And I was like, I've got these different emotions that don't line up like that, but people want you to be who they want you to be, that makes them comfortable. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think what you're talking about is like what was happening was these people were taking their story and pushing it onto you, and instead of asking you, well, how does that feel, or what's the most interesting thing that's come up for you since you got your book, right, or whatever, or when you published it, they were telling you, and it was like putting their insights onto how they thought you should feel, because that's how they felt. And and that's a hard thing to remember, I think, especially when you've got for me, when I've got conflicting emotions, which with what someone is telling me, it is really hard for me to remember that it is their perspective.
Mm.
It is
Yeah.
their story that,
Yeah.
and if it, and that it just felt that good to them
Yeah.
that they really want it for you. They
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
want to believe that that's where
That,
you're at.
yeah. And that is, and back to your poem, that is such a true, I guess, um, not psychosis, what's the word? That's such a true strategy for so much of life. Is like, oh my gosh, I had this painful experience and I got through it by just ignoring it, putting my head on the pillow. I suggest you do the same. Or, you know what I mean? Like, people want you to, they care. They've got that genuine care, or they've like, I think we all have this innate thing within us to help and give advice and care. And when there's a storm and someone's house gets blown away, majority of the people will go and like see, what can we do? How can we help? You know, if an old lady a few months ago, I started seeing like people, like old, like there was an old man that just fell on the ground, and then there was this other person, and like I was going to help them, and it was like a few of these occasions in succession, and then I just saw other people just like pick them up and help them, and you know, people generally have that helping attitude, but what helped you doesn't mean it's going to help me, and I think that's the recognition, and it's like I didn't kick it in their face and say, you know, oh, I didn't feel that. That's big. I was just like, wow, yeah, like, you know, like it's you know, I'm so glad that like that's what you got from your book, and like that is awesome, and that's the feeling, you know, such a great feeling. But I didn't kick it in their face, you know, like that's their emotion. But it doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's what's happening for me or what needs to happen for me for it to be, you know, for me to be the right person or the good or doing the right
Right.
thing, you know.
Right, and I think too that the doctors did that in your book, right? As you were writing about the book, one of the, the doctors were trying to tell you exactly what their solution was, and that you needed to go with that solution instead of asking questions and talking, like really having
Mm,
an
yeah.
authentic, vulnerable conversation about what was happening. And but what you're reminding me of when you were talking about the elderly people falling is that probably most, what I heard you say was that most people would just go over and help them up,
Yeah.
and and you would go and ask if they would like help. Well,
Yeah.
that's actually really important,
Yeah.
right? So, me having a disability and struggling with a lot of things, and this is one day, and my caregivers, I've told them, check in with me and see if I want the help. Don't just do it, because we all have to feel like we're living and like we have uh, some choice, right?
Yeah.
So one day we're at the store and this person drops their cane, and I look to my caregiver and I'm like, "Hey, would you mind picking that cane up for them?" And my caregiver looks at me. I'm doing exactly what I'm asking my caregiver not to do, right? I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
saying, "Do that. Don't
Yeah.
And they look at me and they're like, "Don't you think you should ask him?" And I was like, "Oh, here I am doing
And
it,"
full
right?
circle. Yeah.
Yeah, full
Yeah.
circle.
Yeah.
So it came back and I'm like, "Oh, wow, I do it too." That
Mm,
realization that I need to remember to ask, and he didn't want our help. We
mm.
gave, we asked and he said no, and the no had nothing to do with us. Like, we didn't have to take that personally. We could just let it go and
Yes.
be okay. And in that moment I could feel proud that I was so glad I had a caregiver that reminded me to ask, you know,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
check first, Like, I think that's why the of most times we use a question when we're doing the podcast.
Yeah.
How do you find strength in the challenge? Because is today's question. And I think that's because ultimately, at the end of the day, where's the answer going to be found?
Mm,
It's it's in us.
yeah. And sometimes you're right. And sometimes the self sabotaging is on both sides of that coin, right? So sometimes
Mhm.
we self sabotage by asking for help when we don't really need the help, like we can figure it out. Like, and then sometimes, so, you know, when I was last 6 months, I've been flying over and visiting my grandmother. Um, and there's, you know, bucket loads of challenges involved in all of that. But being there and just letting her figure stuff out, like letting her, like, you know, fix it up and just like, and realizing, wow, she actually I left her, went somewhere, came back, and she was up, and because she's typically always doing this. She was always cleaning everything, cleaning, like always making her environment impeccably clean. And so, she was like there, like walking, like with the walker, struggling. And then I go somewhere, come back, and then she's up just cleaning about. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? No one's there taking the you need help, let me help you, lean on me sort of, I guess, role. And she's up helping herself, doing her own thing. So I think we can self-sabotage by asking and trying to get help when we don't need it. But then also with that man with the walker, and I'm not saying this is what, but when you said that, it made me think sometimes we self-sabotage by not asking for help when we need it, and I guess that's an individual thing to learn. I think we probably do that more with life advice, maybe with personal growth, like spirituality, our money, our education. You know what I mean? It's like we go, oh no, I don't need to learn anymore. I went to 12 years of school. It's like, really? Like if you went to 12 years of school, you need to learn a shit ton. Like you need to unlearn, and then we kind of we forget the I think it's the parallels. There's both sides to it. There's the self-sabotage of not asking for help and then asking for too much help. And it's a fine line. Like with my grandmother, and my cousin rightly pulled me up on something. And I don't mind being pulled up on something, like if it's going to help me and help relationships and help people around me. Like more power to anybody, like to pull you up and help you. Like that's me accepting the help. But I was kind of helping her remember things, and my cousin was like, "No, you got to let her figure it out, and maybe just put little Easter eggs or little, kind of little like when you do an Easter egg hunt, you put eggs there, and then there's a trail of eggs for the kids to follow. Maybe just put little things there." And I did, and then she would figure it out herself. And like you said, we've got a question for this episode, which I'm going to ask you to repeat very soon, so that I'm on point with the question. But like ask her a question, so then she can start figuring out, like, oh, is that where we were, or like, so if she's mixing things up in her mind, ask her a question to actually like realign the pathways to the accurate way. So that I think is important.
Well, yeah, I mean, just think about it. What did you feel like when you overcame a challenge?
Powerful, strong, like independent, yeah, and I think
Capable.
capable, and
Yeah.
the confidence to go,
Yeah.
what else? Like, what else can I figure out? Like, if I can figure out this puzzle, are there more puzzles? Like, life's full of puzzles. How good, we can keep playing and playing and playing. So like sometimes it doesn't feel
Yeah.
good, but
Yeah, but in order to get there, you had to struggle
yeah,
to get to that feeling of accomplishment of, "Oh, I'm capable." You couldn't get there without the challenge. So
exactly.
the challenge almost becomes necessary. And yes, a lot of challenges totally suck. And yes, you guys heard it. I said it. They totally suck. Especially in the midst of them. And
Mm,
so, Brian Fretwell over at Finding Good says, "Hey, what if and people have said this to me all the time, go ask other people what they did."
mm,
Well, how do you do that? Right? So then it like an end reveal, I'm in the middle of a challenge. Like that's always what I was thinking. Like, whew,
vulnerable,
nobody
yeah.
wants to hear this. This is miserable. But what if I turned it around to a positive assumption, right? Hey, when you were struggling to start, let's start your business or whatever it is, the challenges that you're facing, right? How did you overcome that fear? And how did you get it to be a successful business, right? Like asking, knowing because you're going to someone you perceive as successful. And then they're going
Mm.
to tell you, hey, yeah, I was scared too. And then, so not only have you validated them, but then you're getting validated by their answers and you're learning.
Yeah. And I'm going to be like devil's advocate here. I don't know why, but I'm taking this role.
No,
Like
it's fine.
I 100%. I agree with you, and I've done that many a time. And then sometimes you get invalidated because you seek out help and you perceive, and this is, I think we were talking about this earlier, because you're like, you're like, oh, like you got to bring that up on the show. Like you get invalidated because you go seek someone out for help. They are successful. They do really well. And then so you take a lot of what they say as gospel because they got the successful marriage, they've got the successful house, they've got the successful financial setup, they've got the successful giving back and charitable way, and they've got like, you know, the successful like mindset and health and all these kind of attacks that it seems like life can come at you with. They've kind of built this wall around, and they're defending themselves and their family. And so you're like in this awe. You're like, wow, like, okay, how do you do it? Just teach me that. Teach me how to do that. You know, and all the things that they've got, like that's things that should be your aim. Like, yes, that's where you were wanting to go, but the path you take is the question. And like they took a certain path at a certain time, and going back to their time, the world was a really different world compared to what it is now and what the paths are now, you know. So some of their paths can be going backwards rather than going forwards. But to be devil's advocate, like you can seek help from them. And I always did, like, you know, from a few of the people, like, you know, that I would go and seek help from. And then they say, oh, they give you advice, you know, which is what you're looking for. But then it goes against what your big mission, your big purpose is. And then it invalidates what you're doing. And then you end up back in this lost land of, well, what direction do I take? Like, not only did he take the path away from me, or I allowed him to theoretically take the path away from me, he didn't actually lay out a path for me to go to, you know. And that's the kind of the challenge sometimes when you do seek out help, when you're going through, you know, when you're trying to figure out your way, is that help can invalidate what you're doing. So you got to work out what you're going to take away from it, you know, like what bits and pieces you take away from it, and then realize again, they don't have the dream that you have in your heart. They don't have the vision that you have in your heart. And I've got a couple coaches at the moment, and similar sort of thing. Like one of them's like seeing different ways, and and he's got the vision, he's got all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, you've got the energy. You can put these pieces together, where I'm caught up in, like, you know, I can't even see the damn pieces. You know, sometimes you're so involved in your business that you can't even see. Oh, you just line these two things up, and you'll be humming along. You know, or you'll find the purpose of your business. But sometimes, like, you got to also remember, they still don't have your unique DNA, your unique inner footprint of what you're here to do on this planet. So as you're going along, like, don't be afraid to confront that and confront them and change it up. Probably, maybe, possibly, I've been some coaches' worst nightmare, because they're like, all right, we got to the plan, we're doing it this way, we're going this way, and then I follow and we do great, and then I'm like, oh, actually, I just kind of want to try over here, you know. And then it's like I don't want to drop that and throw it away, like, it'd be stupid, but I want to try and merge over here. And then I want to pivot, and then, and then they're like, I can't keep up, I can't follow, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think too, sometimes, you know, I love this. I think it's a slogan: take what you like and leave the rest. You
Yes.
know, take what you like and leave the rest. And I think it's that um challenging. We have to challenge stuff. I think it's innate. I think it's part of who we are. The trouble, I think, becomes on some level when we're more concerned or super concerned about social pain, which I just learned this week was processed the same as physical pain and in our brains and in our bodies. And so
Yeah.
really a lot of times I think what we're most concerned about, like you were talking about your friends earlier on in the show, like, oh, I just don't have that. So you're willing to challenge and risk that social pain for something better, or what you feel called to do, because maybe that social pain is okay for you, right? Whereas it might not be okay for someone else, which I think is what we're a bit talking about too. You know, how do you find that strength in the challenge? Well, for you is like, oh, you know what, I know who I am. Yeah, that sounds okay, but I need to go this way, and I need to listen to me. even though you're saying this is the best way, or with like the other people with the business that you highly respected, and then it wasn't working out. Oh, well, that's not going to work, so I'm going to go this way. How do you do that? So it's not that, I mean, I don't know, I think maybe on some level you could turn it into a game. What are all the different ways that people have found strength in a challenge, which essentially is my podcast, right? Like,
Yeah.
which I never really put together. I knew it was about finding strength, but that's the question we're answering. How do you find it? How do you do it? How do you stand up for those people who are maybe more introverted or more afraid of the social pain? How do you get through the social pain? How do you get through the rejection and just keep going?
Yeah. And I noticed you fed me the question a few times there. Just
I did.
yeah, inadvertently. Like,
I'm
Carl, do I need
I'm
to
good
put it
at
on the
that
back? Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah.
No. If I didn't point it out, it would have been really seamless. But yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we got to do that.
Yeah, no, it was good. I liked
That's
it.
what makes the show fun.
Yeah, and I think that's a big point of finding strength in the challenge is finding the fun in it, and like what you're talking about. I think a big part of it is your personal growth. I think it is also what stuff do you need to remove, like because like you said, that physical pain, but there's also that social pain, and all those things like with my health, like the impact that I had, I was hanging on to it. I was hanging on to the social pain. I was hanging on to the physical pain. I was hanging on to the emotional pain. And the emotion, energy and motion turned into a physical embodiment of dis-ease. And so that experience has made me, attune and aware that we carry shit through life. We carry a crap ton of baggage through life, even when we think we don't. Even when we think, oh, I've got that handled. Oh, mate, like brothers, sisters out there, just be aware. And I'm not saying go and find problems or create problems where there's no problems, or like foster something up that's not there, because you can't. We're powerful beings, we can do that. But just be really aware that there's always things we can work on. The professional, whatever, has things to work on in their personal, in their personal life. If the greatest golfer has a fight with his partner, his game is going to be off, on that day. The whatever it is, the rider, like everyone's going to have these challenges, and to find strength in it, I think, is to really confront and face yourself and go and put your hand up and say, I need help. And even the better I get, wow, like I need more help. I need different help. I need a different level. And being aware of that. How can I get help to give me to remove the crap that I've got stored in me, that I've been carrying with me, that I've clinged my identity to? Oh, wow. Now my identity is clinging to victimhood. My identity is clinging to being poor me. My identity is clinging to being beaten up. It's like, well, how do I actually remove that crap? Because if I want to get something new, I can't get something new if that's stored in there. Like, how am I going to get better if I'm still sick with all this stuff that I've held on to? So that's a really important aspect. And the other thing, I think that, you mentioned a few great points there, and I think finding strength in challenge, what you said right at the end was like the fun side of it. And I think people that are really winning at life are, and whatever you constitute as winning, but I'd say like probably having areas of their life handled is a way of winning. Their mental, their physical, their spiritual, their financial, their charitable, like all those sides, like handled and running and operating and flowing in and flowing out. I think like they really know how to be aware that this is a game, like it's the game of life. Now, I'm not saying it's a game like, oh, let's just fool around. It's like, no, like, how do I play this game better? How do I, oh my God, okay, there's this big challenge, 2020, there's this big challenge, 2008, there's a big, okay, wow, it's like, it's kind of wiped me out. But how do I actually use it? It's kind of like there's a bull running at me, like I think they call it the matador. There's a bull running at you, right? Like, and it chases you, and they get the red thing and they all chase. But the thinking, and this is what I'm talking about, is what if you jump on that bull and ride that bull, right? You're not then in the way of getting pierced by that bull's horn. And I think that's what, like, really successful people is they figure out, okay, and it's not like, it's not a bad way of going, oh, you're just trying to make gold from other people's pain. It's like, no, how do I personally, and then the people that I employ and the people that I look after and the family unit that I have, how do we all maneuver, pivot, evolve, and still find a way through? And that is the human being. That's what we've been doing for a long, long time, is trying to
Yeah.
survive and evolve and thrive. So it shouldn't be looked at in a bad way. And I think that's where you have the fun, is you go, okay, this is a game. Wow, I just got punched. And it's like that Mike Tyson thing. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face, and it's such a straightforward, it's probably one of my favorite quotes, because it's such like the quote itself hits you in the face, because it's literally like, okay, what are you going to do now? And I think the people that really like figure it out and are successful are the ones that go, cool, this is effing messed up. I got no idea, but let's get stuck into it and figure out a way and try and have some fun along the way and laugh.
Yeah.
Like sometimes so much shit is going wrong, or so many things that you just got to chuckle. Like,
Yeah.
you just got to chuckle,
So true, so true. As you're talking about life being a game, I remembered, or reminded, not remembered, my grammar. I'm
That's right.
reminded that Dr. Fred Blum, he would ask, what are the components of a game? What's the most important component of a game? If we're here on this earth and we get to make up the game, what's the most important part? We make up the rules. What does winning look like? Well, winning might look like, I'm as I announced on another show, I'm have no pain medicine anymore. My arms are on fire. A lot of that, they're on fire right now. So what's the game? The game is, let's see if I can get through this and not botch my words, and if I can remember to breathe, right? And I can stay engaged in the conversation. like so so I turn it into a game, and then even if I fail along the way, it's like, well, you know what? I was dealing with a lot right then. That's okay. So I botched my grammar and I used the wrong word. It's okay. And I can kind of laugh and chuckle and be like, well, I made up the rules, so I can win today because I actually did it. I went through and I played the game.
And that's, that takes an amazing mental fortitude, so well done. And it's like when you're sweating and you're, like you're feeling the pain and you smile through it. You're like, you find a way to smile through. And going from one boxer to the other, one person I really think of about that is Muhammad Ali. Like, he's literally in the ring with people that are bigger, stronger. Like very early on, he was always like 9-1 chances. Like, that's what makes him so unbelievable, is that he was just an enigma to what boxing was. He changed the game. I think if anything we can do on this planet is change it. I don't just mean change it like, oh, let's just mess it up and, let's just throw police out of the window because it's not working. No, I mean, like, change it to actually, oh, how do we support the police more and the community more and help everything, run better, because we kind of need police. We kind of need, and so how do we actually change it for the better and evolve it? And I think that's, like, when I think of my going from Mike Tyson to Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali was a big inspiration for Mike Tyson, but like, Ali was basically that guy that was in the ring smiling, having fun, whilst his teeth were getting knocked, like, you know what I mean? Like, he was bleeding and sweating and everything. And he somehow found a way to bring joy and humor and all those things. And you look at, like, from a reporter or from a newsworthy sort of thing, you go and interview the other guy, and, oh, okay, blah blah, I'm going to smash him. Okay, what else are you going to? Oh, I'm going to beat him up. Oh, okay, cool, sweet. We've got our report. Go to Muhammad Ali, and he's there doing little rap things. He's like saying all these crazy things, making everyone laugh. And you see, he's just attracting all these humans around him because he's playing the game of life. He's giving it his best. And whether he gets, and you watch some of his the early days and his thinking in the early days, whether he gets knocked down or makes it, he's going full pelt into it. I think that's the way of finding that strength in the challenges, regardless of it, whether I get embarrassed here or whatever it is. Like, I want to say at the end of the day, and I can say, visiting my grandmother for the last 6 months, going in there multiple days, going into the respite center, you're confronted with the end of life, And for me, for everyone listening, you'd want to be going, hey, I went full pelt, and I embarrassed myself that time. You'll forget all those times. You'll remember, did I go full pelt in my life? And I think that's really where it is. Did I challenge myself? Did I try and get myself, to do things that are uncomfortable, that are painful, that are hard, and then smile in appreciation and gratitude of my strength? I think that's really what it is. Like writing a book. Did you find that with writing a book? Like, I found through writing a book, I was like, I have never done anything this hard. How could this be so hard? And going through it, and there's days of, misery. Like, there's all those painful experiences. If you're challenged with it, so for me, I wrote it and it just came out. Like, it was like, wow, bang, this is beautiful. Like, I'm loving this. It's just oozed out. And then it's like, okay, now organize it into a book. And these days people have ghostwriters, and you can give it over to an editor also, but you still need to work out what you're doing, and that, I don't know, you tell me, what was your book writing experience?
Scary, nerve-wracking, hard, because for me it was sharing poetry I'd written years ago, and it was really saying, this is me. All these feelings existed inside of me, and I had always held my feelings very close and didn't share them, which may have been to my own detriment. But had I not had the challenge, well, first of all, I had to do it. I had to do it. I had known since I was young I had to do it. And so then it was finding the courage and the bravery. So walking through the fear to get there. Now, if it's okay with you, I want to go back to something else you were talking about, like struggle, right? And how Muhammad Ali had joy, and even in loss. And that's one thing that it came to me during a struggle. I realized that I thought, oh dear, we're getting YouTube hot girls review.
Oh wow. I thought, no, cool, I'm a hot girls. I was gonna be like, oh, thank you. I've done my hair this morning.
That's fantastic. If they keep at it, we'll block them, but otherwise they can stay. I don't know if it's a bot, but anyway, the bottom, see, we find joy in that. Like, some people would be like, oh my gosh, that's horrible, and we're laughing. But but so the bottom line is that
I
in
love
the
seeing
midst
you trying
of
to get it back together.
I know, right? It's awesome. What a challenge.
Yeah.
In the midst of the struggle, sometimes, and I remember this feeling, if I felt joy, I was betraying my struggle. And it took a lot of years to understand that. And I think I only got that in the last 5 years. No, maybe 7 years. Or we'll say 10 just to cover it. But where I really, where I was like, oh, I can have joy. It's okay for me to have joy while I'm in this figurative hell. And that, I think, is also a way of finding strength, of realizing, oh my gosh, this struggle, while it's here, it doesn't have to become all of who I am.
I met you totally.
Yeah, well, it was not that long ago that I met a gentleman at church, and really neat guy. We're chit-chatting, hanging out, talking. My friend had introduced us and thought he might be a great guest. And come to find out, which I didn't know while I was talking to him, and it really didn't matter, he was homeless. And not once did he behave like a victim of homelessness or blame anyone else. It was about, "Oh, you know what? I really struggle with this and this, and and I'm, like, asking him questions, "Well, how do you overcome that? How do you do this?" Right? And I'm just fascinated by the fact that he never even brought up that he was homeless. It didn't matter.
Maybe
He
he
was
was on
this
his way out of that, like maybe he was
I don't know.
ascending out of that. And it's kind of like if you talk about, if you talk about the fact that you're homeless, or you talk about your struggles and problems too much, you're kind of choosing, or you're staying in that. Do you know what I mean? But then he's wanting to
Yeah,
ascend out of that, so he's talking about other things. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
how do I get better at this? How do I get better at that? How do I get better at this?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea because I haven't gotten to talk to him since then, but I thought that was
That was
beautiful,
powerful. Yeah,
like
yeah,
that he recognized he was more than a
yeah,
homeless person, that he
yeah.
realized he was a human being and that all these other great things mattered to him, you
Mm.
know? Like, and I think that we have to remember, it's not, I don't think I'm saying it in a sense of don't go talk about your struggle, right? I think I'm saying it in a sense of you can talk about your struggle. Please ask questions, try and figure out how to solve your problem. And please remember that you can find joy even while you're having that struggle, and that it's not a betrayal of the struggle. It's not like if you have joy, then your struggle's not going to go your way. How do you even know that? And is that even true? Is it even possible that that's true? I don't think so, but everybody has to investigate that for themselves.
But things change. Like you find strength in a challenge by things change when you want them to change, when you decide them to change. Like they don't change by staying in that place.
Yeah.
And like that's one of the harsh realities you find in life, is that you can't help everyone. Because some people, they're so attached, or their identity is so baked in. And I've had experiences part of my life. Like I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say, done the exact same thing, and I really could not have been helped at that time. And if you were wise, you'd probably just like not try and waste all of your like time trying to help stubborn, cranky, angry, you know, temperamental me at that time, whilst I was just trying
Um,
to figure it out myself. And I think that's we want to help people so much, but sometimes like they're so attached to that identity, they're so attached to that sort of pain in that situation, that they can't actually be helped. And that's where like questions, or rephrasing it, or maybe confronting them. And sometimes you confront, or you ask a question and then you leave them, and then that question sits with them. Do you know what I mean? And then
yeah.
it evolves.
Yeah, I'm thinking I read a quote earlier and I'm trying to see if I can pull it up, but
You're not going to quote me
I
again, are you? I need to make sure I
no,
know
no,
exactly
no,
what I
it
said
was
here.
out of another book, but I don't think I
When you
can
said you're
find
going
it.
to quote
It's
me before, I was like, shit, what did I say? What did I say? What's she gonna...
No, but
Made me
what I
nervous
was
there for a sec.
thinking, I'm thinking though, I'm wondering how while you felt like you couldn't be helped in that time, how many people just loved you where you were?
Oh yeah,
And
definitely my grandmother. Yeah, my
yeah, and
grandmother and my
how did
grandfather.
that yeah, and how did that help you start to feel differently?
So I knew that there was someone there, and I think that's probably the differentiation I wanted to make. What I said is, like, I think knowing that there's help there, knowing that there's opportunity there, but like in my temperamental stage, if my grandmother pushed me too far, or if like someone trying to help me push me too far, and I know it, like having a younger brother, I know like mentoring some like teenagers today, like you push too far, you try and um, impress your change on the person that doesn't want to change, you push them away. Like, and you got to be very aware of that. And I think like my grandmother knew when I was like, hey, no, just as bad as
Yeah.
it sounds, back off. Like,
Yeah, she stood fast in her love.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
steadfast in that love, and and because she loved you, this is my interpretation. You can totally tell me if I'm wrong, but because she loved you and allowed you to be, right? And maybe push a little bit when she felt like it was okay to push. You knew that that love wasn't based on it. It wasn't a transactional love. It was, she loves me and it's okay that I'm miserable right now.
Mm.
And finding that strength. And I think sometimes one of the most important things we can do is love. Like, I've been going into my sister's class to teach meditation, and I've walked in 6 weeks. No, yeah, 6 weeks. Um, and every week I came in with a question, right? And today everybody answered the question on some level. I felt so connected, but these are kids who've experienced trauma. They're, emotionally dysregulated, and they had to test, does she really care about me? And does she really want to see me do good? Does she really care? Basically, is the bottom line. And the reality of it is, I had to prove to them that I did. They put me through the ringer, and they might do it again, but I'm still going to come in steadfast and loving them, because I know how hard it is to be a teenager, in this world, especially with a history of trauma. Whew, that's tough.
And sometimes finding strength in the challenge, like sometimes the tough love is actually, it unlocks. Like there was a time, and I think I do share it actually in the book, where I kind of crossed the line, but information like Chinese whispers got delivered to my grandmother that wasn't true. So I did something naughty, but it wasn't
yeah, you did. You wrote about it in the book.
yeah.
It came back around to grandma, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And she had the wrong information.
She had the wrong information, so she was operating off the wrong information. But she was so mad because she was raising me and she was trying to raise me right, and coming from more of a troubled upbringing, or a challenging, I guess, upbringing since then. She was trying to raise me right, and then hearing this information, which was like, I did this, and then the information was delivered that I did like this, or like, like something, or something much worse happened than actually did happen. And I was a little bit of a naughty kid, I'll be honest. I was a teacher's nightmare. No, I was keeping it interesting. They just couldn't keep up with me. And
exactly. Well, if you didn't challenge, then I think that's
part of. They weren't looking for the strength in the challenge. I'll tell you, I was giving them challenge. They weren't looking for any strength. maybe they were going, God help me. I don't know.
Okay, I'll let you get through your story now.
Yeah, this could divulge, but yeah, no, I definitely tested out a few teachers, I'll be honest. And I think, anyway, so with my grandmother, just to finish on, I just there was a point where like she kind of said, all right, well, like I'm done here, And this woman, like they've opened their house to over 150 people over their life. They've had exchange students from every corner of the world, every race, every denomination, every religion. Like no, they don't judge anybody, like, and say you're not worthy of love, So, but there came a pivotal point, and she made the decision, and then she turned back on the decision quickly. But I think sometimes you need that release of that love that's there, that bond that's there. It's like that kind of distance makes the heart grow fonder. The sorts of things where it's like, okay, well, if they turn off the tap of love, maybe I'll really change my life now. If they aren't there anymore, and it's a whole thing like, oh, we don't know what we have until we lose it. Like it's like, if they're not there anymore, if that's not there anymore, like maybe that's the change that the young boy, young girl father needs, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Like, and it's so sad. I know people. I was hearing the other day, like family, like a father, like who just doesn't even engage with his family, like just totally goes to work, comes home, just shut off. And it's like, what sort of wake up call would you need to just shock this person out and go, hey, like make the most of these people around you. I think sometimes that cutting off of love makes you realize what you have there. Imagine if you came home one day after work and the house was empty and quiet, and instead of him going home and sitting down and just turning on whatever his devices and like ignoring his whole family, he'd probably start looking around the house. Like, where are the people? Because at some level, his coexisting depends on those other people, and they've just cut it off. They've cut the love, they've tough loved him, and now he's aware, crap, and then those emotions come through. And just one last thing, very strange, right? But I had food poisoning a little while ago, and all these things came up through the food poisoning. And then I think like I had a fight with someone, and I was like, I'm so sorry, and like all these things came out because it's like, well, shit, like your health's been taken away for this period of time, and it's like that thing, like the love's been taken away, the bond between the grandson and the grandmother, the grandmother's like a mother now, has been taken away. It's like, well, crap, like what have I lost here? And sometimes you need that confrontation and that tough love.
Yeah, I agree. I think on some level I agree. I think that for every person it is different, and every situation is different, and sometimes we really have to go inside and ask ourselves, is this love? Is this love? Sometimes it is love to say, hey, this was not cool, etc. You need to go. And that can be said from love. And other times love looks like, oh, man, that really sucks. I'm sorry you're going through that. I think that what happens is when we deliver that message thinking someone, like from a manipulative perspective, that someone will change. So really, it's really having to go inside of ourselves. Am I coming from love when I do this? And I think that's what might matter most. And I think your grandma really was coming from love and injury and sadness, but ultimately at the core there was that love, that deep love that said, hey, I love you so much and this is not okay.
Yeah, I love you and I expect more from you.
Yeah.
And that expectations is a beautiful thing, because it's like I know you're a great person. I know you've got great potential. I know that you are a good human inside. And I know this behavior doesn't match up with that. And I expect more from you. And that expectation, lots of people get freaked out about, oh, I don't have high expectations. I want to have damn high expectations of myself, because I've got a lot invested in me. I've got my grandparents. I've got a lot invested in me. And if I don't have high expectations of myself, and I just do whatever and cut people off and treat people badly because I don't really have high expectations, then I'm going to feel terrible. Unless I'm drugged out of my brain and I can't even feel anything. But you know what I mean? Like that's the true reality of it. Like if you're a conscious, aware, your blood isn't circulating with, like drugs that are like lowering your senses. If you're aware and you're doing things below your expectation of what's right, what's good, what's ethical, it's gonna affect you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. What's the homework for today, Kyle?
Well, I don't know, maybe we could, I guess, strengthen the challenge. Maybe something on expectations. I don't know, because it's an interesting one. Like lots of people, like, that like this, it was in my family. I heard it somewhere. It was like, oh, like someone was worrying in the family or stressed out, and they're like, oh, look, if you don't have any expectations, you won't be worried. And it was like, but then if you don't have any values and principles, then nothing will matter. It's like, well, shit, like everything matters in this place. So, you've got to have them. So, maybe, I don't know, we've probably done things about writing out your values and your principles, but maybe we can.
We have.
Yeah.
I'm wondering.
Well, what do you suggest? You go.
Well, I'm wondering if And I think this might be really interesting to have them look back at a challenge and figure out what their strengths were or what strengths they gained from it.
Oh yeah, you love this one.
I do. I mean, just because I think it's helpful to know, okay, what are the strengths? Because I think ultimately what you're teaching in your book is how to trust yourself, how to trust, and especially in this chapter, listening to yourself and knowing the path you need to go down, even when others are saying, no, that's not the path. So I think if we have them look back, find those strengths, maybe they would be more confident in staying steadfast on their path and their choice of what they know to be true. What are your thoughts? What do you think?
100%. Just like the government will audit people, like businesses do a self-auditing on some of the times where I think the best times are where you overcame something that you didn't think you could overcome, or
Yeah.
like what you were telling me about, like your arms on fire, like, and then you journal about that, like, those sorts of things. Like when you look back, and that's a big thing, and I think a big inspiration from writing the book came from looking at a lot of other inspirational people. And then one of the books was like, okay, like, prompted me to like look at my own life and look back and write about my own successes. And I was so outwardly focused and look at everyone else that I kind of forgot about what I had done. And then when you go and look at what you've done, like that gives you a lot of like strength. So yeah, I'd say doing a self-auditing exercise, asking great questions of, like, when was one time that I surprised myself? When did like my abilities exceed maybe my expectations or my self-worth? When did someone else like compliment me on something that I did, and how did it make me feel? And then like tap into that. Well, what if I keep working at that? So yeah, that's a great exercise.
That's fantastic. Okay. So I'll go first. So thank you for watching The Destiny of Your Soul. I'm Angela Talent.
I'm Carl Spirides.
And we'll see you next week. Wow.
Cheers.
That was fantastic. You guys, we got something on today. Anyway, okay, I'll end the stream now that I made it totally awkward. See you later.
See you later, guys.